Good afternoon everyone, and welcome on board with myself, Scott, and I am teamed up with the same cameraman as this morning. It's VM, and we all owe him a very big thank you for helping us find these leopard this morning. It was his beady eyes that helped the final part of tracking them down come to a close, and it was so exciting. We had heard their audio twice as they mated and had an idea of the area we needed to work because some of their tracks showed us to move into that area, and it didn't take VM very long. Once we had repositioned in the second spot, he asked for my binoculars, stood up on the back of the vehicle and spotted Kwatile, which is the name of the female leopard here, and the big dominant male is Tingana. So if any of you are joining for the first time, it's important that you know that these leopards are very well known and quite closely monitored by not only us but all the other game rangers and guides in this area. So we've got a very good understanding of who they are, where they've come from and what they get up to. And right now they are asleep, but they are in the process of mating. They've been mating at least since yesterday afternoon. That's when we got to see them for the first time, but they have also been in contact with one another 3 days prior to that, and it was Kwatile, the leopardess, who was trying to seduce Tingana when Jamie found them 3 days ago at the Arathusa waterhole, and it took him a while to warm up to her, but now they are in the full motion of mating. So I'm sure it won't be long before she gets up again and starts to do her beautiful dance technique, which arouses him and gets him to get up from his slumber and start mating. The temperature is nice and cool this afternoon. It's about 22 degrees Celsius, 72 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's completely overcast as it was on the sunrise safari. And the good news is Jamie is also heading out on the other vehicle with Andrew, and it's Andrew's birthday today. So what we'll probably do a little bit later is swap out the sighting. It's such a magical thing to experience. Oh, what's happened here? She could be getting ready to start seducing him again. Look at this. Oh, she's doing this to work him up. That shame, his paw's a bit injured. I'm not too sure what's happened there. Wow, it really is phenomenal how each copulation varies so much from the others. And for those of you who were with us yesterday afternoon, you'll remember quite a different affair. I think a bit more growling. But isn't it beautiful to see how she moves so fluidly in and around him before she presents herself? And I also love the way that she lies down like this and rolls around. I'm not copying what Nikki's trying to say to me, but she sounds like she's urgently trying to get a hold of me, so my radio doesn't appear to be working too well, but let me try and work out what it is she needs. And Nikki is in the final control room. She's directing the show. I'm not sure if Jamie's found something interesting. Well, I'm not sure what she's trying to say to me, so we'll just stay here and enjoy this beautiful sighting for a bit longer. Nikki, I can hear what you're saying. Could you just go again with your message? Sorry about this, everyone, but she's desperately trying to reach me, but it's not working out very well. But That's not a problem because it looks like she's going to try and seduce him again. Looks like he's had enough, but I think she's going to continue until he finally gives in. Here we go. Wow! Look at how different the intensity was of that dismount compared to the last, and it's really fascinating. It's a painful procedure for both of them, and that's why as he extracts, they lash out at one another. So it's not abnormal behavior to be witnessing, but this certainly is very, very intense mating as far as leopards go, especially considering they haven't just started. Usually the initial copulations are the most intense, and after a day or so, which it's been now, it tends to kind of cool off a bit, but that's not the case for now, and it's certainly providing us with some incredible sightings. And the intensity, and not only that, but that coupled with the short breaks between copulations is quite something. It can sometimes take every 15-20 minutes, but she may be even going for it again now. Can you believe it? She's lured him in again. I think she repositioned there because he wasn't penetrating initially. And she rolls over onto her back again. Well, what an incredible start to the sunset safari, everyone. It's so good to have you all on board, and if it is your first time joining, it's important to know this is a live safari, and we're going to have to rush you across now to Jamie, who's found another pair of animals that she would like to show you. We're not going to go anywhere, and we'll see you a bit later.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Sunset Safari. And it appears as though love is in the air in Nkuhuma. And just before we went live, I saw these two pale morph Wahlberg's eagles mating, which is the first time I've ever seen this in my life. So really exciting afternoon. We are actually sitting right at the junction with Wahlberg's road, somewhat appropriately. But how cool is that? Look how sweet and affectionate they are to each other. That is so cool to see. Unlike the two leopards off to our left, who I've just heard the action from. Andrew and myself heard the sort of aftermath of their mating. These two have been much more affectionate and gentle to each other. And it's the female on the right and the male on the left, as far as I can tell. You can actually, we've got a really nice size comparison. We don't often get to see them sitting so close to each other, but the female raptor is always a little bit bigger. And how amazing is this? They mate for life. They migrate thousands of kilometers throughout Africa to sort of the northern areas of Africa, and then they fly all the way back here to the same place to nest year after year. Absolutely mind-boggling. Very, very cool to see. And if we look up to the left of where they're sitting, the neighbouring tree is where their nest site is, just in the fork of that knobthorn. And in the next few weeks there will be an egg there, and then a chick. And how cool is it that we get to sit with them and watch their progress from the very start, from conception until fledgling, hopefully, barring anything unforeseen or any raids by a neighbouring African harrier hawk. And it's right on our doorstep here on Nkuhuma Game Reserve. And I've just been doing some reading up on them. And the pale morph birds make up about 5 to 10% of the population. And we've got 2 of them. And that greatly increases the chance that their chicks are going to be pale morph coloured as well. So it's very unusual to see Wahlbergs that are this grey and white colour. The much more common colour variant is a sort of a browny, tawny colour. And just in case I forgot to introduce myself, and I have a very important message for the viewers, my name is Jamie, and I have Andrew, the aardvark, back on camera with me, and it is also Andrew's birthday today. So we're going to wish him a big happy birthday, and I'm sure you, the viewers, will all like to say, I'm going to say it on your behalf to Andrew, so happy birthday, Andrew.
Thanks very much.
I hope it's going to be an awesome day.
It's already started off.
It has started off amazingly. Genuinely, this is the first time I've ever seen this kind of level of affection between Wahlberg's eagle and it is the first time I've ever seen them mate. Which is so cool. I don't even know how often they will mate like that. And I'm just wondering if any of the viewers might have a little bit of info as to how often big raptors will mate. Maybe a conclusion we can draw from some of the other birds that are in your area locally. And if you do have any further info on that, you can send that through to #SafariLive on Twitter or to questions@wildearth.tv.
Welcome back, everyone. And they've just finished another copulation. It wasn't the most intense and happened quite quickly. But what I found with this specific female is she almost does it in bouts of 3, so it may not take long before she gets up and performs that fluid seduction routine. Could it be happening right now? I think it could. No, not just yet. And we reposition the vehicle onto the other little side of the bush that they disappeared behind, and it appears like we may be ping-ponging a little bit, but it all depends on where she decides to present herself. So we'll stand by here for now. And love is in the air this afternoon. Those Wahlberg eagles have been mating, and so too have these leopard. And if you just think back to a few days ago, there was also lions mating with the Nkuhuma lioness and the Birmingham boy. There she goes again, it looks like. They are exhausted, and on average they could potentially mate between 250 and 350 times in the 3 to 5 day mating period. an exhausting process. Interestingly enough, she is very, very cautious and often gets up and stares off into the surrounding bush, and the reason for that is that she's deep out of her territory. And Karula, the female leopard who is dominant in this territory, this is her land, was seen very nearby to here this morning. So who knows, she could arrive at any moment. And isn't that exciting? Well, good afternoon, Mauricia. First question of the afternoon. And Mauricia is interested to know how far away can you hear the audio of these leopards mating from? And Jamie, interestingly enough, has just heard them, and she's about 300 meters away as the crow flies, so just under a quarter of a mile. But in good conditions like this, the bush is still quite dry and thin, so the leaves won't absorb the audio. You could possibly hear them if you had good ears from about a kilometer away. I personally have terrible hearing, and all the other presenters can often hear things that I cannot. But roughly about a kilometer, and it's such a useful way of finding mating leopards. It's what helped us fine-tune our search this morning. Well, wasn't that great? And Mauricia, it would be great to know where about in the world you are watching and what the weather's doing there and what the time zone is. So let us know what life is like on your side of the planet. And it's always nice for us to understand that you get a much better idea of what's going on in our lives, but it's sometimes quite nice to know what's happening in yours. So let us know, and I hope you enjoy the afternoon with us. Well, good news is Jamie's managed to creep a little bit closer to the Wahlberg's eagles, and we might try and reposition the vehicle while you're gone. So enjoy the close-up view, and we will see you very shortly.
Welcome back, and we definitely don't want to take you away from those two amazing leopards for too long, but we do have such an incredible sight here, and I drove around the corner. I half expected them to fly off, but they're perfectly comfortable, so we have a really wonderful close-up view of our loving Wahlberg's eagles huddled together against the cold breeze. And look how beautiful they are. Just to give you a rough idea, I'm probably about 500 meters away from where Scott is, and we could hear the mating leopards loud and clear. So that sound definitely does travel. I can also hear ellies off in the distance, and I think I'm going to head across there and see what they're up to. Just wanted to give you one last view of these two beautiful and unusual Wahlbergs. So for now, we're going to send you back across to Scott and catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back. And not the most successful repositioning of the vehicle, but as VM just mentioned to me, it's a bit of a gamble because we can never be sure which way she is going to decide to lure him. And I think I can hear a low rumbling growl again. She could be warming up for another session. Very faint rumbling growl. It's either that or a vehicle approaching. Well, Jill in Canada is amazed at how often these leopards have been mating and can't help but ask, does the male have a never-ending supply of sperm, or does he just have very, very busy factories, I guess, Jill? Because it's not something that any mammal can store up for too long, so I guess those little caramel berries beneath his tail are working overtime at the moment. He certainly does appear to be absolutely exhausted. I was thinking earlier though, it would be interesting to know which one is expending more energy, and I can't help but think that it's Kwatile. Each time she seduces him, all of the muscles in her body are tensed up as she does that dance and throws her body all over him. So I think she's actually got a tougher job than he does, but it'll be interesting to hear your thoughts. What do you guys think? Who's expending more energy here? And who's got the harder job? Tingana or Kwatile? It'll be very interesting to hear your thoughts, so let us know. It's very easy, hashtag Safari Live, or send an email through to questions@wildearth.tv, and that way we can get your guys' opinion to this matter. But it certainly is incredible stuff, and usually with the leopards that I've seen mating, and I've probably seen it maybe 20 or 30 times now, roughly somewhere in between there, there's usually a bit more of a pattern, and every 15 minutes they tend to mate. Not a strict rule, but once they get into a flow, it kind of sticks to that routine. Whereas with Kwatile, she almost works in bursts of 3. She does 2 or 3 copulations, then has a small breather, and then gets going again. So she's not giving Tingana any chances here to relax, and I'm really interested to know what they're going to do next, where they're going to move next after this. And another thing that we need to keep reminding ourselves is that there is a great chance that Karula could be here watching from a safe distance, keeping an eye on the situation. She won't be concerned that Tingana is mating with Kwatile. She'll be more concerned that Kwatile is deep into her territory. So I think she's just going to keep an eye on things, and being a leopard, she knows that sometimes you have to venture out of your territory in order to mate. So she's not here to cause trouble with Karula, and maybe Karula is just keeping a beady eye on her. But if we do see all 3 of those leopards in the same sighting, it'll be something that would be wonderful, wonderful to share with you. There's another vehicle arriving into the sighting now. And they're going to have a great view, which I'm very happy about. Okay, well, Jamie is finding you lots of different animals this afternoon, and she's got you another animal beginning its name with a W, but we may need to just come very close to the vehicle here, but we are merely spectators, and she knows that, so we've got nothing to worry about. And we're going to send you across to Jamie shortly after this. Wasn't that incredible? That was the most aggression I've seen post-mating out of all the copulations we've seen. And who knows, maybe it's drawing to a close and they are having their last final throes of passion before they go their separate ways. Who knows? Maybe it's the sheer exhaustion that's causing their animosity towards one another to increase after each copulation. Sadly, the animal that Jamie had found you ran off into the distance. It was a waterbuck, and I'm sure it won't be long before she finds something else. I don't know if VM's got an angle to get close to this front right paw. There's some kind of a little injury on it. We're not too sure what's caused it, but let's see if we can get it from this angle. It's not looking too promising. I don't think I can see anything. Let us know if you see anything. And Wolfgang in Sweden has just asked that very question. He has noticed the small injury on the front right paw of Tingana, so you are spot on. I didn't notice it yesterday afternoon. I'm not sure if any of you, the viewers who were joined in then, did. So please, again, let us know if you did see any wound on that front right paw. I feel strongly that it happened sometime in the course of the night. And even if it wasn't a direct result of their mating, as she lashes out at him and vice versa, it could have just been that as he dismounted, he may have landed awkwardly on a hard branch or a spiny branch that may have cut his foot. But we'll keep monitoring it closely. And speaking of injuries, there's also quite a few injuries on Kwatile. They are older injuries. We're not too sure what's caused them. Via might be able to get you a view of one of them on the back of her head. I really don't think this is a result of him biting down on her neck during the mating. And it looks like an older wound to me. Possibly from the same skirmish that caused her to get the other two puncture wounds on her right flank, one behind her right shoulder and another one kind of on the center of her stomach. And Laura, I'm not entirely sure how she got these wounds. We have been speculating possibly when she was trying to attack an animal with horns, she may have been caught on the wrong end, or maybe an animal like a warthog, which has got very sharp tusks, managed to gore her as it defended itself, or possibly a fight with another female leopard. But the wounds look like puncture marks, not like deep scratches or scars that would have been inflicted during a cat-on-cat battle. And Jennifer in Missouri has noticed that the wounds on Kwatile appear to be bigger than they were yesterday, and you're entirely right. She's licking them profusely, and in doing so her sandpaper-like tongue is removing a lot of the hair surrounding those wounds. I think that is what's causing the wounds to look bigger. And even when we saw them for the first time 3 days ago, they were considerably smaller. But she's just licking around these very small puncture wounds. I mean, I guess you could probably poke your finger into the hole to give you an idea of the size of the puncture wound. And the pink flesh surrounding that, especially behind her right shoulder, is what I think is just the bare skin due to the fact of her cleaning it so profusely. Obviously not very comfortable there. You can see he is nursing that front right paw ever so slightly. Look at how hypnotizing that coat is. And as VM zooms in, you can get a good idea of how beautiful this animal is, and also that it's not necessarily a spotted cat. Those little black markings are called rosettes, and they're typically black, as you can see, with a caramel inner, and that is a major distinguishing feature between the spots of a leopard, or the rosettes of a leopard, and the solid black spots of a cheetah. So that's something to look out for. Those spots on his neck, which are solid and black, are more cheetah-like. And hopefully it won't be too long before we do find another cheetah to show you. but due to the high densities of leopard and lion in the Sabi sands and the very thick vegetation, we don't see them all that often. Another predator that we don't see too often is wild dog, and it's been quite a few months since we've seen them, but the good news is we had a report from the guides in the Manyaleti, and they've seen a pack of 15 wild dogs just a few hundred meters north of the boundary with Buffels Hook. So probably about 2 miles from us. And wild dog are renowned for moving huge distances in a very short space of time. And hopefully in the coming days they'll pop onto Djuma or Arathusa for a visit. Well, we've got a response from Crystal, and she thinks that Kwatile's got a harder job doing the mating here. And I couldn't agree more. I think Tingana's got it easier than her, but they both have a marathon of mating that they are currently probably midway through. We're not entirely sure when they started. All that we know is that 3 days ago they were together, but he was not responding to her dance moves, and yesterday afternoon when we bumped into them that had changed, but I don't think anybody had seen them on that second day and on the morning of the third day when we found them. So we'll never know the end of that story, but we could expect her to still mate for 2 full days. Even if they did start on the second day, it can be a 5-day process. And she's going to have to follow him through this unknown territory as he continues to patrol and make sure there's no intruders on his turf until she is satisfied that enough mating has been done. Well, good to hear there's people watching in Nova Scotia, Canada, the Orkney Islands. Varying temperatures in all these different places. Alabama. And isn't it wonderful how there's people all around the world joining in on this live safari. I wonder if Trent in Fiji is watching. It's been a while since we've got a question through from him. And interestingly enough, when Brian, I can't remember where he's from, I think it might have been Pennsylvania, he discovered Safari Live about 6 or 7 months ago.
Toronto.
And was it in Toronto? Oh, well done, VM. And he fell in love with Safari and decided to come out and visit, and stayed at Arathusa. So we went across there to meet him. And I asked him if he had ever sent through a question, and he said no, that we answer all of his questions before he gets a chance to send them in. But like I've said before, we don't only need to answer your questions, but any comments or thoughts or interesting facts about what's going on in your lives is also interesting for us. And I'm still waiting for you to send a question, Brian. You promised you would. So if you are burning the midnight oil, Brian said he actually changed his work calendar and worked from midnight till 3 in the morning so that he could have Safari Live playing in the background. So if it is dark and early in the morning there, let us know. we've just got a great message through from Jeff, who's obviously a doctor in New Jersey, and he says he's got Safari Live playing in the waiting room, so every time he comes through to collect the next patient, he gets an update on what's happening out here in the wilderness. And I guess it can be quite a soothing experience for the patients as they wait to come and see you, Jeff. Well, good afternoon to Charlie, and Charlie's interested to know, why is it that these leopards copulate so often? And there's a kind of number of reasons, Charlie. The fact that she's had to kind of make a bold move and come into a different leopard's territory to mate means that she needs to kind of make sure that it works. She doesn't know when next she may get the chance to come across this male. They don't hang around together. They're completely solitary cats. So I guess that's one factor. They want to make sure that there is a positive insemination of the eggs, as well as the fact that the mating process actually helps to induce ovulation. So you might find that the first few copulations are actually just to get the ovulation process in place, and thereafter, once it is, the latter copulations towards the end of the mating are going to be the ones that create a positive fertilization. So a number of reasons. Another interesting thing with leopards is that there is a strong chance that she could mate for a couple of days with one male and then move off and mate for a few more days with another. And I'm told that the researchers are still trying to establish if it's possible that two males could father two separate cubs from the same litter. So that's really interesting stuff, that one egg may be fertilized by one male and another by a different one. So you could essentially have two kids that have got different fathers in the same litter. Now, I'm not convinced that to how far they've got in the research of that, but it is a possible theory that I've heard. Okay, we're going to send you across to Jamie quickly. She's got some elephants up close to the vehicle, so enjoy.
And welcome back. As you can see, we do have ellies all around us, walking very, very close behind, off in the drainage line. Now, if you were watching, oh, hello, there you go, you can see how close they are and totally relaxed. Hello, yes. Oh, those nice baboon tail. Now, if you were watching the sunrise safari or any of our highlights reel, you'll be happy to see the return of this little celebrity and Mom. It's definitely the same ellies from this morning. And earlier we watched this big female pull out or uproot an entire sandpaper raisin, and then her baby went and sort of head-butted the soil for a while before deciding to dig. I know, Mommy, I respect it, it's okay. She's just letting me know that wasn't aggressive. She was just letting me know that she's watching me, especially with a little baby like that. You can see she's still relaxed, she's still feeding. It's just a message to say, hey, I'm keeping an eye on you, don't try anything. Hello, little one. Oh, but they're so cute. And there's so much curiosity when they are this tiny, tiny age. Now that little one, I would say, who came and had a look at us with Mom, is probably somewhere around the region of 1 year old. So still very, very tiny and learning so much. I've seen it suckling. I've also seen it supplementing its feeding with a little bit of grass and a little bit of acacia leaves, but still very young. And typically, if you're trying to age an elephant, if you look at the size of the youngest one, when they're sort of up to 1 year old, then they reach about the height of their mother's stomach. So that little calf is probably somewhere in the region of 1 year old, maybe just a little bit older, but still very, very tiny. Still a little bit clumsy with its trunk and with its limbs, but absolutely adorable to see. And I just love watching those little babies because they are so curious and they just have so much to learn about. And we're sitting right in the middle of this herd. This morning I counted 18 individuals, and I think this is probably about the same amount we've got here. They're all spread out all the way from the ones that walked behind us, right around into the drainage line, and across here into this thicket. Now I'm not going to reposition just yet. Obviously with them so close and so relaxed, I'm not going to in any way try to upset them. And they're really kindly moving individually into frame. We've got one coming through here. They are absolutely loving the baboon's tails, new leaves. So those small plants that they're targeting, and you can see this one having a go. That is the baboon tail. And they're getting the new shoots and the new leaves. And imagine what a pleasure it must be for them to have spent the last few months eating what is really quite dry and must be fairly tasteless food in terms of the grass and the leaves and the bark, and now to have these incredibly fresh green shoots. It must be such a treat for them. And that's one of the really cool things about this time of year, is you can almost imagine the animal's sense of joy at having something different to eat. It's wonderful. We've got mating animals all over the place and happy elephant. How very special. There you go. Going once again for the baboon tail plant. Hello. Coming to have a look, say hello. Young female just passing by, and I'm pretty sure this is the same young female who came really close to our car this morning for the sunrise safari, and she's perfectly content to just pass right by us and then move on. I'm just keeping an eye on her, seeing what she's doing, but she's perfect. You can see how incredibly relaxed these ellies are just from their body language. They haven't really paid us a second glance apart from the mother who moved through. Andrew and I have got our heads on sort of swivel mode just to make sure we keep an eye on everything that's happening behind us. There's just ellies everywhere. Let's try to keep track of all the action. As I said, so cool to just be able to sit with them and enjoy their company. And it is of course such a privilege that they feel comfortable enough with us to just be completely relaxed and feed around us. They actually all approached us. The whole herd just moved through very slowly past us. And you'll probably find that that calf's mother that we were watching earlier, along with a couple of the bigger females, are probably the ones who gave the message that it's time to move out of the drainage line that they were in and carry on with their journey northwest. That's just a way of making sure that they don't impact the area that they're feeding in too much. And how clever is that? All animals know instinctively that even though the feeding might be really good right here, if they feed too much, if they overfeed here, then the area won't recover and the feeding in the next years won't be as good. So they've got this incredible inbuilt instinct. Now, I'm not sure if they do it consciously or if it's something that just happens, but they know not to overutilize an area unless they have to. this morning I know that Jim asked about whether or not elephants were ruminants. Now Jim, I don't know if you're watching. We didn't get around to your question this morning, but just while we are talking about what they're eating, and we have been treated to the odd cacophony of flatulence that accompanies any elephant herd, but it gives us a good place to start. And they're not ruminants, and when you do see their dung, which I'll show you in a moment, it is very, very coarse and not very well digested. And that's because they are hind gut fermenters. So they have one stomach, and the rest of the breakdown of that plant material happens in the intestine, where they've got lots and lots of microbacteria that will then break down all of the cellulose or the more indigestible parts of the plant. And that in itself, as a byproduct, creates a great deal of gas, it's usually methane gas, which is why when you are with elephants, you sometimes hear expressive sounds coming from their rear ends. There we go, there's some rumbling happening here. They're talking to each other. Just going to be quiet for a moment and listen. That was an expressive sound from the front end, not the rear end. Oh, it seems as though Kwatile is up to her mischief again, so we're going to head across to her.
Welcome back, everyone. And Kwatile's at it again. And Tingana is certainly expressing his fatigue. Can you believe how close they are to us? Probably within 1.5 meters, and that's what's making the filming a little bit tricky for VM. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. Can take a much closer look at this wound on her head now, and if she does turn around and present her right side to us, we'll notice that. There we go. Hard to say, it looks like an old injury though. As I was saying, if she turns around and presents her right side of the body to us, we might be able to see the other puncture wounds. I cannot believe how close she is. Is she going to do it again? Or is she just going to go for another rest? It's quite interesting, she could be going for it again. Can you believe it? Just meters from the vehicle. We are trying to show you the wind, but there's sadly too much of the vehicle in the way. And I wonder if this now is not Tingana's cue to carry on moving for the afternoon. It's a cool afternoon, and there is a chance that he could decide to keep moving and patrolling his territory, but for now it looks like they have parked us in. They've stopped very, very close behind us, too close for even VM to be able to show you an angle on them, but they're still here for now. I can hear a bit more rumbling, and she may just be seducing him again. Good news, they've continued on. Let's just see what happens here. She may copulate one more time. And she's going for it. Look, she is. Can you believe it? He's trying to have a toilet break and she's trying to seduce him. Not good timing, but she is very focused at the task at hand here, which is creating a bit of an awkward moment for him. Can you believe this? Well, this is a first for me. Can't resist taking a few photos, because some people may not believe that this actually happened if we don't document it. I love the way she flicks her tail around him. Well, there we go. Now she's got his attention. Wonderful. I love the way she rolls over onto her back like that. Isn't it just too awesome? You may have noticed her nipples poking out there and small brown suckle marks around them. They're not fresh. Let's see if we can see them again now. There we go. You can see very light brown spots around her nipples. And it's rumored that she may have had cubs quite recently. Some people saw her with suckle marks, and it's very possible that she gave birth. Nobody necessarily may have seen her cubs before they may have been killed by a number of different predators. The highest likelihood being that of another male leopard that did not father the cubs, but lion, hyena, snakes like pythons will even eat leopard cubs. A large number of animals can catch and kill them. So the mortality rate is very high, and due to that high mortality rate, what generally happens is that the female, as soon as she's lost her cubs, within even a week or two, can come into season, mate, 3-month gestation period, and then get the next generation into the system. And it's not uncommon for female leopards to lose a high amount of their litters. The majority of cubs will be lost, not the majority will be raised to adulthood. And Shadow, a female leopard who we know very well, has actually never raised a cub till adulthood, and I think she's had 6 different litters. So hopefully her current cub, Sindile, will be the one that makes it, and he's certainly showing good signs of it. Okay, well, we're going to have to reposition the vehicle, which may take a few moments, and Jamie is still with the elephant, so we're going to send you back to there and catch up a little bit later.
Welcome back. And while Scott repositions, we've also repositioned and found ourselves a perfect, almost bird's eye view, not quite, but a really nice view across this drainage line and at one of the biggest females of this herd. We heard her, this is the one that we heard rumbling just before we cut across to Scott. And there's a very good chance that she is, if not the matriarch of this herd, then at least a high-ranking member. And she is absolutely devouring this tree. I'm going to grab my binoculars and have a look to see which tree it is. I can't quite tell from this distance. I'm almost tempted to say a young boerbean in this drainage line. It doesn't look like a young tambuti just by its growth pattern, but she's absolutely loving it. You can watch how she uses her tusks as a tool to break the branches. Or not in this particular case. I think she might just bite that branch off. But what actually led us to this position was listening to her push that poor tree over, just to get it at a slightly better angle so that she could feed on it. Just listening to the sounds of the parrots and the chewing noises that she's making. Now the rest of the herd has moved off quite a lot further. They crossed through this drainage line just as we came through and carried on. And she's obviously decided that this is where she would like to be for now. And that's very common with elephants. Very often you will have the high-ranking female remaining behind. And just look at how she's tugging on that tree. Oh, got the piece she wanted. But a really, really beautiful setting for an elephant sighting. I'm not sure if you could hear that, but there was a little bit of rumbling coming from her, communicating to the other herd members. Now, as wonderful as this view is, I believe that Scott has managed to reposition in that incredible leopard sighting that we've been able to enjoy for the past 2 days. So let's head across to him, and I will try and catch up with the rest of the herd and be back with you a little bit later.
Well, aren't we so fortunate to be on a live safari, hopping between 2 vehicles, showcasing some of Africa's most iconic animals, the elephants and the leopards. It looks like Tingana may have been trying to chew on some grass there, and just like domestic cats and dogs, they'll do that to help purge their system. And look at what a beautiful leopardess she is. There have been no more copulations since we've been away. And we're going to have our work cut out for us now. We appear to be moving into a very thick drainage line. She's coming straight past our vehicle here. Hello, girl. Can you believe how close she is? I'm going to try and keep my movements quite slow because we don't want to startle her, but she decided to come up to us, not the other way around. And when that happens, it's usually nothing to worry about. It is important to bear in mind, we know this leopard well, and we know that she's in good condition. If that had to happen with a leopard that we did not know, I would be very concerned, or a very old looking leopard, because there is a very slight chance that old, injured animals may become dangerous to us as humans. But a healthy female like this in her prime is nothing to worry about. Did get my heart beating though. Whew. There's Tingana showing that leopards prefer not to eat grass, but from time to time they have to. They look far more suited to chewing on the carcass of a duiker or an impala, whereas eating salad doesn't really suit them very much, but a necessity. And if it is your first time joining onto a live safari, it's very, very important, and I try and stress this as much as I can, that leopards occur throughout Africa, but there are very few places where you can come and view them like this, where they have accepted us into their lives merely as spectators. We don't help them, we don't interfere, but we are incredibly fortunate to be allowed the proximity that we get to them. And regardless of what they are doing, hunting, mating, raising cubs, they accept us and allow us to share these wonderful moments with all of you. I'm very, very happy to hear that Brian in Pennsylvania was the city, and VM and myself were wrong. I said Philadelphia, I think, initially, and VM thought it was Toronto, but it is Philadelphia, not Pennsylvania. I'm getting confused again. But Brian, I'm so happy to hear you watching, and we forgive you for not sending through any questions, but just very happy to hear that you are still watching the show. And Brian did actually give in and fulfill his promise of sending through a question, and he'd like to know if there's been any further interactions with the Anderson male, who is Tingana's enemy to the west. They compete for territory on Tingana's western and southern boundary. And not that I know of, Brian. The last time that I think they interacted, we were lucky enough to be there. Sadly, when we got there, it wasn't the best interactions, and Tingana was just grumbling at Anderson. But that's not to say they haven't had a few more debates or discussions with nobody around to document it. And it'll be an everlasting feud between the two until one of them eventually becomes too weak and moves out completely. But for now, it seems like they have settled on an agreement, and so too has Tingana and Mvula. So Tingana's sandwiched between at least two males, one being Anderson to the west and the other being Mvula to the north and the east. And still on the topic of the Anderson male, Brian would also like to know what would happen if the Anderson male came onto the scene here. And it's a very good question, Brian, and interestingly enough, I've never actually seen two male leopards with one female before, but I have heard of a few rare sightings of it actually occurring. And what happens is the female literally bounces between the two males. Provided the males don't get too caught up in their own feud, they aren't hugely interested in the mating. And you've seen how much work Kwatile has had to perform in order to entice Tingana. And you could expect if there was another male here, they'd almost be relieved to split the workload. And it has happened before. I do know colleagues who have seen two males with one female, and she ping-ponged between the two. So I'm guessing that is what would happen. There may be a little bit of rasping vocalizations from the males in between. So thanks, Brian, and very, very happy to hear that you are watching all the way from Philadelphia. Finally, I think I got it right. Oh, he's licking that little wound on his foot.
It's actually bleeding.
Oh, I wonder what caused that wound. VM just said it appeared to be bleeding, and I agree, I saw a little trickle of red blood there, but he's licking it up now. Well, we've got two of our viewers on the same wavelength. One is in New York and the other is in Dallas. And their names are Ellen and Mischian. And they would like to know who is going to be the one that decides the mating should come to an end. And it's almost always the female. The female is the one that seeks out the male and then has to work her magic to get him to mate with her, which is quite interesting stuff. It's a bit different with lion, who often live in coalitions and therefore compete with their brothers So even though they're part of the same team, when a lady gets thrown into the mix, there's competition. So you find male lions will actively seek out females more so than leopards. At least that's in my experience. And if it was the other way around, oh, it looks like that grass is working. Let's watch closely. It's not going to be pretty, but interesting nonetheless. He was chewing on grass to help purge his system, and it looks like it's working. It looks incredibly uncomfortable. Oh, sorry, Tingana. Come on, it looks like you're nearly there. Oh, sorry, boy. Well, not the prettiest of sightings, but interesting nonetheless, because we very often see the predators chewing the grass, but very seldom get to show you the effect it has. And isn't it remarkable how quickly it worked? And shame. Earlier he got interrupted in a toilet break. Now he's just purged his system, and she's coming in and wanting another round of mating. Can you believe it? Well, doesn't get much better than this, does it? And look, he's scent marking, I think. I just caught out the glimpse of my eye there. You may have seen him scratching his back feet into the grass, and there we go. They're the little caramel balls that we were speaking about earlier that are working overtime, the little factories. And I think Tingana is going to probably sleep for a week after this. Good afternoon to Tim, and good to have you with us. Tim is interested to know if this is the first time that Kwatile has been seen mating with Tingana, and I don't think so. If my memory serves me correctly, she was actually seen mating a few weeks ago by James, just south of Djuma. And he's 9 years old now, she's 8 years old, and I'm sure that they would have come into contact in the past. Wow! The intensity has all of a sudden ramped up again. And there's another scent mark coming. And we didn't see it that time very well, but quite often she rolls over onto her back after the copulations, and Maddie in Scotland is interested to know if she's doing that to help the fertilization process, or is it a submissive move, submissive behavior, showing that she maybe didn't mean to be nasty to the big male. I think it's for the fertilization of the eggs. So that's my theory, and I don't think it's to be submissive to him. And interestingly enough, Maddie, lioness will also perform the same maneuver quite often. Well, as we drive over a lot of these bushes, we know which ones can tolerate the vehicles driving over them and those that pass. Just going to try to get you some video. Here we go again. I've lost count now. Now I fear we are moving into a very difficult area to navigate the vehicle, so prepare for a little bit of off-roading, or we might even potentially lose them at the worst case. So let's hope that doesn't happen, but in the meantime we're going to link you across to Jamie and see what these leopards do next. We'll keep you updated.
Guys, look what we found. Isn't it just adorable? Oh my word. Look at this little weeny creature. Probably only a couple of months old, if that. Still a little bit unstable on its legs, still covered in baby fuzz. So cute. He can hear the adults rumbling to each other, but I just absolutely had to show you this. The herd's moving fairly quickly now. Look at this little one trying to keep up, stopping to try and have a snack. Oh man, oh that is so cute. You can even see the baby fuzz all over its back still. Now there's a lot of youngsters in this herd, but this is definitely the smallest baby elephant I've seen since I started working here. Tiny weeny little thing. And that surely must put a smile on everybody's face. What a special little creature. And that little thing is so precious. That is 22 months worth of investment that mother's put into just gestating that little baby and then producing it. And when it's born, it's probably around 100 kilos, possibly even a little bit less, which for an elephant is fairly small. And I'm going to try and reposition so that we can get a glimpse. I've counted now 5 babies around the age of 1 or younger. That's the 5th one, is the youngest one. But that was just too precious for words. And so nice to see how relaxed these ellies have been with us. I'm so grateful to them for giving us this opportunity to see their precious babies. And babies are so important to an elephant herd. They are such a vital part of their social structure, and the bonding that they have between herd members is so Mommy just chased away one of the younger ellies who got a little bit too close to that little bubba. I'm going to do this very slowly and very carefully. She's quite a young mother. She's a bit smaller than some of the adult females, so I'm going to do this nice and slowly. Stop here for a moment just to get a view of them. I will reposition in a little bit, but just to get a nice view. How precious is that little guy? I didn't manage to have a look at whether it's a baby girl or a baby boy. I'm just checking now. I think it might be. Oh, there we go. Looks like a little baby girl. Oh, and the drongo's having a wonderful time. Oh, so cute. Resting a leg. And the wonderful thing about little babies this age, you can see it's still a little bit wobbly as it walks. I think it's getting tired. What I was going to say is the wonderful thing about calves this age is they actually need quite a bit of time to have a rest. And that could explain why this herd has been moving very, very slowly through here. And this whole herd will band together to look after and raise this little baby. She'll be related to everyone within the core group of this herd. They are all her family, and they're going to be teaching her the skills that she needs over the years to come, and she'll be with them for the rest of her life if it is a female. How precious is that? Oh, here we go. Run after mom. Not separate from mom for too long. Look at it go. Oh, but that's adorable. And that little baby is going to be so loved by everyone in this herd, and it's going to grow up with so many playmates to spend time with and to learn from and to play fight with. Awesome stuff. And you'll see that it's quite thick where she's disappeared off into, and because that baby is so small and she is quite a young mother, we're definitely not going to be crashing through after her. We will leave her to move off and take her baby off in peace. But what a precious moment. Now I've still got a couple of them here out in the open, so I'm going to shift forward and see if we can get another glimpse of them. Oh, hold on. Let me just see how this Ellie's doing. I have a personal sort of respect where I prefer not to turn on my engine if they are close, although this one's fine. And just looking at where we are now, I'm really hoping that this herd is going to start moving towards, they are moving in the direction of quarantine clearings. And I think that might be their ultimate destination, which would be really wonderful. I hope they don't stay too long in the drainage line. Maybe we'll get some really nice clear shots. There you can see baboon tail and then feet coming through. Wow, I really think that there is no bad mood that sitting with elephants cannot fix. And this little one, just let me have a look, see what it is. Also looks like a female. In fact, it might have been the female who came through earlier, close to the vehicle. And she's probably maybe 8 years old, young still. She will be one of the individuals that will practice her mothering skills on that little calf. So when that calf gets a little bit older and mom is a bit more prepared to have other elephants come close, she will pet it, she will groom it, not groom it, but stroke it with her trunk. Oh, they really are loving the baboon's tail in this area. And I think this is my third elephant sighting here in this particular position over the last 2 weeks. And that is because it's such a perfect place for them to come and munch on this newly sprouting plant life. You can hear her munching as well. Awesome, awesome stuff. Now, we've been sitting with these ellies for quite a long time, and we actually spent time with this herd early this morning as well. And Gemma's been watching, and she's picked up on the fact that those wonderfully big African elephant ears look rather soft, and was wondering if they actually are. And in this case, they definitely are softer than the rest of them. It's very, very thick skin that elephants have, but they're much, much thinner than the rest of the body, and that's obviously because they are a cooling mechanism, so richly supplied with capillaries that need access to the external temperature so that the elephants can flap them and bring some airflow over the capillaries just to cool them down. Now, Gemma, if you feel them, I don't know how to describe this because I want to say the skin is really rough, so you can still feel that incredible elephant skin texture, but at the same time they're still very malleable. Maybe soft is the wrong word, they're malleable. You can fold them, you can move them around, and I have had the opportunity to do that before during an elephant relocation. So I wouldn't describe them as soft, they are rough, but they are malleable, and you can fold them and move them around. And now that ellie has moved off, and I'm not going to give her any kind of fright by moving, I want to see if I can reposition to get you a shot of the elephant on the termite mound. Let's give it a go. Oh, I think the one's going to move off. Well, let's loop around. Try and avoid the monkey orange, avoid making too much noise. Stop here. I don't want to startle that little one. Now they're crossing into quite a thick drainage line, but that's perfect because on the other side of that drainage line is quarantine clearings, and I'm really, really hoping we get to see them out in the open like that. And I've noticed over the last week or so, they've definitely been focusing on termite mounds and the vegetation growing around termite mounds. And of course, many of the regular viewers will know that this is because of the nutrient content that the termites bring up from the soil. And it means that the plant life that grows on there is a little bit richer in terms of nutrients. Now, if you are a new viewer and you are joining us for the first time, welcome to the live safaris, and because this is live, it means that this is happening right here on the Sabi Sands Game Reserve. And the amazing thing is about these live safaris is you just never know what to expect. I was certainly taken by surprise by the presence of that really tiny baby. But if you have any questions that you'd like to ask us, you can send them through to #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv. Lots of fork-tailed drongos following this elephant herd around. They must also feel like Christmas has arrived early, because the ellies disturb all the insects around them, and then they can grab them. And of course, after our first big rains, there are lots more insects out and about. Okay, what a special ellie sighting this has been. And it's quite unusual to see them, first of all, this relaxed, especially on not necessarily in the Sabi Sands, but on a day like today. It's very, very windy, and that usually puts elephant herds on edge a little bit, compromises their hearing and their sense of smell, so they tend to be a little bit more restless. But this herd has been absolutely perfectly relaxed with our presence. I think that's a nice way for Andrew to celebrate his birthday. We're going to loop around towards quarantine now, but they are going right into a thick patch of drainage line, and I'm not going to go crashing after them, especially not with all of these babies that we've seen wandering around. What I am going to do is loop around onto quarantine and hopefully we can catch up with them there. They are moving slowly, but they could well start to head in that direction. I'm just checking to make sure there's no elephants behind me. I have been surprised like that before. You think they've all crossed and then you discover one that hasn't. That's your head there, Andrew. I mentioned that I'd seen this herd earlier this morning, and I definitely had. At one youngster, I recognized the mother. She's got a notch out of her left tusk. So that was definitely who we were with. But I didn't see that tiny, tiny baby this morning, so this has been such a treat for all of us. Sort of what I meant about being careful when you back up out of elephant sightings. Not the clearest view, but there very often is either a big female following behind or a young male who's right on the cusp of being kicked out of the herd. I'm just having a look at this one. She looks like a female to me from at first glance. I said that I think this is a young female, and I also mentioned that the mother of that calf is quite a young looking female to me. She's still quite small in terms of height. And Sharon from Ohio, welcome to the Sunset Safari. You were wondering how old elephants have to be to have their first calf. And typically they'll start to reach sexual maturity at around sort of 12 to 15 years of age. But as far as I know, that first mating isn't always successful. And I'm just checking up in my book to make sure I'm correct on that before I give you some misinformation. But I think they have to be around 15 to 17 when they have their first calves. Yep, so there is quite a large gap, which is why I wanted to double check that. So there's quite a difference depending on, first of all, where the elephants are and what kind of condition they're in terms of when they can have their first calves. So they can reach sexual maturity as early as 9 years old, which was information to me. I actually thought they had to be a little bit older, but the females can reach their maturity at 9 years old. And that can then be even as late as 18 years old. So there's quite a huge discrepancy. And I imagine that that discrepancy comes about depending on the habitat that they live in and the amount of nutrition they've had during their developmental stages. So I imagine that elephants with access to a lot of green, highly nutritious food will probably come into sexual maturity in their first estrus a lot earlier than those who are desert inhabitants. And for young females, that first mating experience can be quite traumatic because they'll be very small, around the size of this female, possibly even smaller, and they then have to accept the attentions of male elephants who are probably somewhere in the region of double or triple their weight even. And that is why elephant mating activity is so short-lived. It's a very, very brief moment so that the elephants, the young females' hips and backs don't have to bear too much weight for too long. It's also one of the reasons why they have such prehensile penises, is to allow them to direct it in very quickly and keep the moment of penetration very short so that they can dismount the female and they don't put her under any due stress. Just listen, there is a herd of 20 elephants around us, or at the very least close to us. 20 elephants, or 18 to 20 elephants, all, let's say, averaging, okay, we'll take calves into account, so let's say average weight is 2 tons in this herd. So 400 tons of elephant wandering around in the bush, and listen to how little you can hear. Hold on, my maths went funny there. 40 tons of elephant, not 400 tons of elephant. That was a little bit extreme. The point still stands though. Absolute silence. And it just goes to show that's how easy it can be to, when you are walking in the bush, if they're just standing, if they're not feeding or cracking or doing anything with the branches, it's so easy to accidentally come upon them, especially on a windy day like this. That's why it is so important to make sure that you check things like wind direction when you're walking in the bush and try and make sure you don't surprise any of them. And it's a very uncomfortable experience encountering an elephant herd on foot unexpectedly. The females tend to respond quite poorly to your presence if you are very close to them. That's only if you've bumped them by surprise, but if you get a really nice approach with the wind in the right direction, there can be nothing more special than spending time with elephants on foot and just observing their natural behavior. Now, most of our ellies have moved off, and I am curious to see if they're going to pop out in quarantine or if they're going to settle down in the drainage line. And for now, Scott is still with those mating leopards, so while I loop around, let's head across to him and catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. And after a momentarily loss of these 2 leopards, we've just found them again. And not much has changed here. She is still urgently trying to get him to mate with her as much as possible. Watch closely. You see there, he didn't actually penetrate, and that's why there wasn't a large amount of aggression showed after he dismounted. It looked to me like he was actually above where he needed to be, and I think she may continue to harass him to do it properly rather than that misfire which just happened. We're going to reposition quickly now. But isn't that a beautiful shot, watching these 2 incredibly beautiful cats temporarily disappear off into the undergrowth? Well, from a sighting of cute baby elephants to an intense action sighting of 2 leopards mating, we can't ask for too much more for a sunset safari, and aren't we all so lucky to be here experiencing this together? I thought for a moment that they could head to the in that direction. Now they've veered further west and south. We are going to be able to continue following them through this area, which is great news. a strong chance. Look, it looks like she's coming already. But she will come and get him to mate again now. She's on a rampage. Wow! Well, I think he did it properly that time around, and you would have noticed the intense change in aggression that both of them displayed to one another. That was remarkable. And look at how close they are to the vehicles. It's as if we are not even here. And that's testament to good habituation protocols that allow these animals to feel relaxed around us when in the vehicle. It's very different when we are on foot. And they won't be nearly as calm or relaxed with us. So don't be fooled by the fact that they do come close to the vehicles. They are completely wild leopards, but it's through many years of gentle manipulation that allows us into this unique position where we can view them so closely in an open vehicle, and they are not concerned for their well-being and we are not concerned for ours, because we both know that we have no intentions to harm one another. I'm going to try and reposition. Sorry if my head gets in the way. I'm lying down at a very awkward angle, and all the guests in the vehicle around us are looking at me like I'm crazy. There we go. Sorry about that. Oof. What will be the next move? Well, while we wait and see, we can answer a few more questions. This one's from Cheryl in Illinois, and she would like to know if leopards are the only species that growl and bite during copulation. Certainly not. I know lion are exactly the same, but there are always varying degrees of aggression depending on who is mating with who. This for me has been one of the most intense mating leopard sightings I've seen, and that started yesterday. She's having to work very hard to seduce him, and even the aggression we're seeing after the dismounts is, for me, abnormally intense. Looks like we are going to get spoilt to yet another show of this. Take some screenshots. You'll hear me firing away rapidly with my camera. This is a very rare thing to capture and document, and I'm making the most of it. Again, that time I'm not sure if it was a successful copulation. There wasn't that same aggression that we saw last time. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. And the next question is through from Maury Cruz and Susie. And they would like to know, how do leopards and lion pick and choose their mate? Well, it varies between the two different species. With leopard, what females will do is they'll know who the dominant male is, whose large territory encompasses probably 3 or 4 or 5 females, and they will seek him out to mate with him. And possibly, if a female's territory is on the fringe of 2 males' territories, which is highly possible, she may seek out both, as she has the knowledge that either one would kill cubs that are not fathered by themselves, and leopardess are known to try and con males into thinking that they may be the father of cubs that they may not in fact be. So that's how it works with leopards, and in this case she has moved out of her territory into surrounding females, and initially it was shadows, now she's moved into Karula's territory, following him as he goes about his business as she secures this opportunity to mate with him. Now with lions it's a bit different, but similar in the fact that a coalition of males will be dominant over a large area within which they may acquire 2 or 3 or 4 or even 5 prides of lioness. And those lioness, just like the leopardess, will know to mate with the dominant males of their territory, as if they mate with others, the dominant males who rule the area in which they move would kill those cubs, no different to the leopard. But they won't have the ability to actually necessarily pick an individual from the coalition. The coalition members decide that amongst themselves, and even if they come to blows with their teammates, which they do, as they fight over the opportunity to mate, the females will have to accept whoever is the biggest and the strongest out of that coalition. Now, we've been spoilt with great visuals, but not only that, the audio that we've been hearing has been remarkable. And Morning Glory in Missouri has brought up a good point, and she said, with the sound traveling of the leopards, wouldn't this bring out the other leopards or even lions? Most certainly it would, and that's why they're on fairly high alert, especially Kwatile. I think she could well know, and who knows, may have even interacted with Karula sometime last night. But this morning Karula was trailing them, and could very well be trailing them now. If there were any other males in the area, it would also attract them, and lions most certainly. So I guess a dangerous time for them, but they are incredibly agile and aware of their surroundings, and if the sound that they made was too detrimental to their well-being, they would have evolved differently, and those who vocalized and were killed from vocalizing, that gene would have been wiped out slowly over the generations. So it's not too much of a problem, but it will certainly increase their likelihood of running into trouble, more so than when they're moving around silently and stealthily. There she goes again, it looks like. I think he's missed again. Yeah. Misfire. She's not going to accept that, I don't think, and it's probably going to sway those hips of his all around his neck and head and try and entice him to do it again, but this time do it properly. I just heard an update on the game drive radio and not sure exactly what was found, but it might be worth Jamie double checking that, so Nikki will give her that message. I'm not sure if she's got her game drive channel on. Again, I'm not convinced that that was successful. There wasn't enough aggression during the dismount, which indicates that he in all likely did not penetrate, although her behavior suggests otherwise. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. This rolling around is quite indicative of possibly a successful copulation. Very difficult to see what's going on back there though, so I can't be certain. Some of you may have got a fleeting glimpse of the wound behind her right shoulder, and that's what she's licking now. This is this alertness I was talking about earlier. Every now and then she gets up and just checks her surroundings. Welcome back everyone. Sorry, I believe you lost our picture for a moment there, but you didn't miss too much, and it looks like she's at it again. Phenomenal. That was really interesting. That was quite an abnormal dismount. They almost fell over sideways, and each one has been different in its own special way, and the quality of these sightings have just been absolutely incredible since we saw them start mating yesterday. Oh, this is a name that I haven't heard before, and it's a viewer in Utah by the name of Larker Wolf, and they would like to know what that flappy fold of skin is below the big male leopard's neck, because the female, he's noticed, does not have that. And is that normal? And if we did see a cat that was injured or in need of help, because he thinks that may be the case, or she, I'm not sure whether Larker Wolf is a male or a female, would we ever intervene? So a few different questions in there. I'll start with the last one about intervening with sick or wounded animals, unless they are an endangered species, so in this area cheetah or wild dog. It's very unlikely that we would intervene, and it's important that we don't, because Mother Nature has a plan for all of these animals, and if we start interfering with her plans, we would not be doing the ecosystem any favors, and the death of one leopard, as sad as it may be, may make a huge difference in a lot of herbivores' lives, as naturally there would be one less predator to feed on them. So that's an example of how the misfortune of one animal may mean a great fortune of another. The same goes for an antelope that may be injured. It may make the difference for an old leopard or a female leopard with 2 hungry little cubs to feed. That may be an easy meal that saves those 2 hungry cubs, yet if we were to help the antelope, we would be doing the leopard a huge disfavor. Regarding that flap of skin below the male's neck, it's absolutely normal and a characteristic of large male leopards. A young male leopard, kind of between 3 and 5 years old, will not have a dewlap, which is the name of that flap of skin, to that degree, and Tingana certainly has a beautiful one. I'm not too sure the exact reason for it. Possibly a little bit of extra loose skin when fighting may aid the leopards, as they won't lacerate or scratch open their opponents' heads or necks. Kind of similar to a degree to the mane of a male lion, but different of course. But that could be one theory that they have, why they have all that extra skin. And maybe it's just an offset of their large size. They look very different to the females. The females are a lot more petite and slender, whereas the males are more robust, big head, big shoulders, and that flap of skin again is just a characteristic of all big male leopards. Some that are much older have an even more pronounced dewlap. So he's in perfectly good condition. He's in his prime. He's 9 years old, and as he probably gets older, he'll start to decline ever so slightly in his condition. And males typically live for about 12 to 15 years, some a little bit older than that. So at the moment he is looking great and is in his prime. He's come into this territory from further west and managed to push an older male, a 10-year-old male, further to the east. So he does command a lot of respect from that male. But interestingly enough, there's a younger male to the west that's pushed him into this property, and that's all happened in the last year. And territories are an ever-shifting and evolving process. It's not cast in stone, and it's never a set definitive line. There's always a little bit of an overlap between the male leopard's territories, and it's the males who compete with the males, and the females who compete with the females within the males' territories. Speaking of other leopards and shifting territories, a female leopard called Shadow, who has interestingly followed Tingana, this big male, as he's moved into Nkuhuma, and she's followed him to avoid the Anderson male, the individual who's caused trouble for him. And she wants to avoid the Anderson male because she knows that he could kill her 1-year-old male cub called Sindile. And Hiker in Wisconsin is wondering about young Sindile because a few days ago he had to be darted, and the reason why they darted him was to inoculate him against rabies, which is a deadly disease to the animals out here. And he had caught a domestic dog a few days before, and there was a strong likelihood that that domestic dog that broke into the reserve from the surrounding communities was carrying rabies. There's a rabies outbreak in the area at the moment. And I'm just going to reposition a little bit to give VM a better angle. I've left him in the dark here with not too much to do. Sorry, VM. That should be better. And basically, I guess that is an area where we do intervene, which was Laka Wolf's question earlier, but that's completely different. It's not a natural process, rabies. It's a disease that needs to be controlled rigorously because it could wipe out entire populations if it does start to spread. So there's one example of where we do intervene, Laka Wolf. But back to Hiker's question. He's wondering whether we've got any updates on Sindile since he was successfully darted. And no, nobody's seen him that I've heard of. So hopefully tomorrow morning we'll be able to track them down. But I'm sure he's doing fine and well. And in the coming days we should also get updates on the rabies tests that were performed. on that dog which was exterminated, and if in fact the dog did have rabies, they will then perform follow-up inoculations on that young male. I think he'll require 3 or 4 more inoculations to make sure he doesn't contract rabies. It's a terrible, terrible disease that causes you to become hydrophobic. You become mentally very shaky and wobbly, and it sounds like a terrible, terrible way to go. And it's very dangerous if these wild animals do contract rabies, because there's a very strong likelihood that they will attack us in this delirious kind of rage that they get into when contracted, or when they have contracted rabies. And I think I'm going to try and reposition, because we don't have the best spot here, and we can quite easily get into a better visual or better area. So let's quickly reposition before she decides to get up and once more. Much better. View of this wound eventually. Quite a deep little puncture, and like I've said before, but for any viewers who may have joined recently, we're not exactly sure what caused this injury. It's not the mating. I'm sure they get a few nicks and cuts as they lash out at one another, but nothing too serious. And that would have been from another altercation, either with another leopard. Females will fight with females, or possibly with a prey animal that she may have been trying to take down. Well, Laura in Pittsburgh's just come up with an interesting theory regarding Kwatile's wounds, and because she is rolling around in the grass so much and on the ground after copulations, is it not possible that that's irritating the wound? And something they haven't thought about, but now that you've mentioned that, I think you could certainly be right. They wouldn't usually roll around on the ground as much as she has been doing, and that naturally is going to make the wound a little bit more dirty. So maybe a little bit of extra work, but with leopards and most of the animals I've seen with wounds, if they can reach them with their mouth, they tend to lick them very readily to keep them nice and clean. But it's certainly a very plausible theory, and thanks for sending that through. Oh, are we in luck again? Quite possibly. Yes, you know, I'm not sure if they are just so tired and worn out that their pain threshold is also increased, and it may not be hurting as much as the initial copulations earlier on in the mating process, or whether he is in fact not penetrating when he doesn't dismount with as much anger and rage as normal. So something to think about. I can assure you though that over the 3 to 5 days the most intense copulations are usually on the first day, and they tend to subside with intensity and aggression as they become more accustomed to the process. But I'm not too sure on the final outcome or answer to that. I'm looking around very intently now, making sure nothing heard that audio, which was a good point that Morning Glory brought up earlier. Could certainly attract other predators. So close to us now, you can just see from the upward bangle that BM's having to shoot down at. And here she comes slinking off. What can she see back there? I'm just waiting and hoping that Karula is going to pop onto the scene, and it is possible, but no sign of her just yet. She could be in there somewhere following their audio and their scent trail. Good stuff, time to reposition again. Wheel to the full left turn, it tends to have a little bit of a problem. Just need to try and sneak us into a spot quickly. There we go. Just need to get a hold of Greg on the Game Drive channel quickly, and he's looking for an update here. Greg, come to Twin Dams Road, I'm not sure how far out you are, and then get a hold of me for an update. They're slowly mobile south and east towards the 2 track that runs from Twin Dams to Philemon's Dip. across to Jamie. The signal's not good more sea, but we are going to stay with the leopard.
Welcome back, guys, and we've just heard a report that there is one lone lioness by Treehouse Dam. So I've rushed across to see if I can find her. Now, unfortunately, there's nobody here at the sighting to guide us in, so we have to do it ourselves and just try and figure out where this lioness is hiding. She said she was very, very close to the dam. The dam is just ahead of us. Let's see if we can figure out where this lion is hiding. This is really interesting stuff, because if it is one lioness on her own, I wonder who it could be. It's probably, and this is just a guess, it is probably one of the Nkuhuma lionesses, and most likely the one that was trying to mate with those Birmingham boys. The question is, where exactly is she? Now, I'm not sure whether Scott mentioned it or not, but the Birmingham boys have moved all the way into Mala, which is incredibly far to have moved in one night. They're obviously on a mission. And I wonder what's been happening. Now, if it is the Nkuhuma lioness, it means that her seduction efforts probably haven't been too successful. We've got to find her to confirm who it is. It's a bit tricky in this kind of light to spot where the tracks have gone off-road. I have a suspicion that it's here. It's going to loop around in here. Let's see if we can spot her. Keep your eyes peeled for one lone lioness. Now, while we're moving through this block and we're keeping our eyes peeled, trying not to smack Andrew at the same time, I don't think that would be a very pleasant birthday gift. I know that Connie was wondering about if I could give any updates about those lions from yesterday. Now, as I mentioned, the Birmingham boys have moved south into Mala, very far away. Very interesting movement for them to have chosen, because I know that there's lots of male coalitions in that area. So I'm not sure what it is they think they're going to go and do there. They're a little bit, maybe getting a little bit too big for their boots, but probably just on a scouting mission to see what they can find and where it would be best to establish themselves as a dominant coalition. As for that lioness, nobody had any reports of her right up until the last few moments, where somebody called in that they'd seen her around Treehouse Dam. Where she is another question. We have to try and keep our eyes peeled. What I do want to just do is hop onto the Game Drive channel and get another update as to which side of the dam she was on. I did have directions, but apparently they weren't clear enough for me. You just get hold of Taxon. In the distance there, it is quite dark, but in the distance there is one very confused looking warthog. I'm not sure if Andrew, if you can get him.
Oh, yes, okay.
You think you can get him?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's have a look at this confused looking warthog for a moment while I try and get hold of Tax on the Game Drive channel. Tax. I'm not sure which station was with this Mufuzzy and Gala, but maybe if I could just have another description of where she was. Perfect, thank you, Craig. Okay, so Craig's just told me the reason why we... Oops, sorry, one more message. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so the warthogs have dashed off and I've got an update as to where that lioness was last seen, and this would definitely explain why we can't see her. It's because we're on the northern side of the dam and she was on the southern side of the dam. That helps a great deal. I'm going to make my way back onto the road and we'll cut across south and let's see if we can catch this lioness and find out who she is. Navigate our way out of here without causing undue damage to the environment or the vehicle or Andrew. I think we better go around here. Sorry, round we go and back to where we can find this lioness. Oh. I wonder what those warthogs are thinking about our current position. They must be very, very confused. Now, what an amazing time Scott has been having with those mating leopards. It really is quite incredible. And we've got this really, really exciting prospect now of finishing up a little bit about the narrative that's unfolded over the last few days on Nkuhuma. I wonder if she's hiding in this drainage line over here. I've already checked the dam, but let's check into the drainage line as we go over the wall and see what we can see. I'll go nice and slowly, see if she's around here. Now, if this is the Nkuhuma lioness that was trying to mate with the Birmingham boys, we definitely don't want to see her out on her own around here. There's lots of dangers. And Elise, you were wondering if she will reconnect with her Nkuhuma, the rest of the Nkuhuma pride and the rest of her family. And the answer to that is I'm certain that she will. She's going to be trying to contact them. She's going to be trying to contact call. Just checking. I'm going to head in that direction first. Whoop, there's a bit of a hole. She will be contact calling and trying to figure out, and it always amazes me, Elise, and it's something I've often thought about, even with a leopard like Shadow. You know, Madiba doesn't always stick around, or a cub doesn't always stick around where she left him exactly. And it amazes me at their ability to find each other once again, especially after long periods of separation. Apparently she was on a termite mound, but as it starts to get dark, we've really got to keep our eyes peeled. We're looking for flashes of black or on the tips of the ear, on the tail, or a white belly. Keep your eyes peeled. Come on, lioness, where are you hiding? Okay, now I've been told to look for a 2-track somewhere in this region. I'm also looking very carefully for the other vehicle's off-road tracks to see if we can figure this out. And I've got them. She is somewhere here. Okay, here we go. We're definitely on the right track now. I'm just really hoping she's stayed where she was. There she is. Yes, we've got her. There she is, tucked away. I'm just going to show you quickly where she is hiding, and then we'll reposition so we can get a better look as to who it might be. Now to me, I'm just going to get my binos out quickly. That looks like 2 lions to me.
Yeah, maybe 1 male.
And that would explain something I missed out of our whole story and update, because I wasn't sure if it was confirmed. Now, when I said that the Birmingham boys were on Mala Mala, only 4 of them were definitely accounted for, and I think we might just have accounted for the 5th, and that is very good news for the Nkuhuma pride. It means that her efforts have been successful. Okay, let us reposition and just double check to confirm that, but I'm fairly certain we're right. And we have a little bit more of the puzzle pieces falling into place. Now, this male lion is now very, very far away from the rest of the Birmingham Boy Coalition. And this has created a whole new interesting scenario. I'm just going to pop my car into low range so that we don't disturb the sleeping couple. I told you that love was in the air in Juba. Shift away slightly so we can have a look, and that's definitely one of the Birmingham boys. Now, I'm not sure if it's the same male that she was with yesterday. That's going to be very, very difficult to confirm. But Kelly, you were wondering if the Birmingham boys, before obviously we found this particular individual, you were wondering that if they were to return to her, or she were to reunite with them, if she would mate with the same male that she's been with, or if she would mate with a different one. Now, when they were first spotted on Djuma the night before, so 2 nights ago, she was seen flirting with all 5 of them. And it just so happened that the one who obviously responded the most was actually, surprisingly, one of the younger ones. I'm not too sure if it's the same boy. Andrew, if you need more light, you must just let me know. I can't see on the...
This is perfect.
Perfect. He's got his head down. I wonder if today he's managed to get it right or not. Yesterday when we saw them, he was showing his age a little bit and his inexperience levels. She was flirting with him. Most of the time he didn't respond at all. And when he did, the one time that he did respond, I don't think he was terribly successful in his attempts. But now we have a very interesting situation. Because one Birmingham boy on his own, especially distracted by the feminine wiles of an Nkuhuma lioness, is very definitely much more vulnerable. And they look to be the picture of contentment, which is so hard to believe after everything that we've seen in the interactions between the Birmingham boys and the Nkuhumas. Now, Sarah in Ohio, welcome as always. It is great to have you on the back of the vehicle with us. Now, Sarah wanted to know if she was on her own, which is what we originally suspected, whether or not that would mean that she had been rejected by the Birmingham boys. And I think it would have meant that exact thing, because typically, as I'm sure you know by being a regular viewer, when lions are mating with males, they will actually spend 5 to 7 days mating with them. And that's the case even if this is, as I suspect, a false estrus session. She would still have been mating with them for much, much longer. Now, I was a little bit worried that that was the case, because it would show that the Birmingham boys are so young and inexperienced to the point that they actually don't know what to do with a female who's open and receptive to them. And of course that then opens up the possibility that we might have seen further aggression towards the Nkuhuma pride. But I'm really keeping fingers crossed, just because I have become so attached to the story of the Nkuhuma lionesses and of course Junior, that this particular scenario that we're experiencing now might well spell the end, at least for now, of the conflicts that the poor Nkuhumas have been subjected to. Now, if this was a typical mating situation, we would not be sitting with lions looking as sleepy as this for as long as we have. Yesterday afternoon, I mentioned we sat with them for close to 3 hours, and there was still not much action. She tried a couple of times, but he was completely unresponsive. Now, you've seen, obviously, with Tingana and Kwatile, how frequently and often they have mated, and it's much the same, especially at the beginning of an estrus cycle for lions. And that is what suggests to me that this is a false estrus, as long combined with the fact that he is young and inexperienced. But at the moment, they look to be the picture of contentment. Now, if only this particular Birmingham boy would lift his head, then we could get a better idea of who he is. And if it is the same one that we saw yesterday. But as it starts to get dark, of course, there's a very good chance that they may still get active. Oh, John in Atlanta, you're on exactly the same wavelength that I'm on in terms of the identity of this Birmingham boy. Now, I was wondering if it would not be... Well, when I first approached the sighting yesterday, I was expecting to see the oldest Birmingham boy, or the eldest Birmingham boy, with the Nkuhuma lioness. That was just the scenario that I had pictured in my head. And I was very, very surprised to come round and find that it was one of the younger males. And John, I'm not sure if it's still the case now, but I think it could well be. He still looks fairly short in the mane department. And that is interesting because it also tells us a little bit about the personalities of the lions and whether or not there's a more dominant character to them, rather than it just being entirely based on age. Now, I mentioned yesterday that there was a lot of interesting discussion around the Mapogos, and for those of you who are watching for the first time and not too familiar with the history of the area, the Mapogos were a big coalition of 6 male lions that used to rule pretty much, or at least over half of the Sabi Sands, or at least dominate over that area. And it was made up of male lions of different ages. And despite the fact that one of them was considerably older than the others, it was the younger two, Kinky Tail and Mr. T, who often had the opportunity to, or often showed quite a dominant streak in that coalition. Now, with lions, it's not uncommon for the female to move between the males, but usually it's one of the bigger and larger ones who gets the first opportunity to mate, and then he gets a little bit tired after 3 or 4 days of mating, maybe 3 or 4 times every hour. That's a lot of activity for the male. And after that, he kind of can lose interest in her, and then she'll move to one of the other members of the coalition. So it's not uncommon for the lioness to move between males, but it is interesting to me that the first lion to get the opportunity to mate was a young male. Or at least, maybe not the first to have the opportunity to mate. Oh, the leopards are mating again, and I want to reposition, so catch up with you later.
Welcome back, everyone, and good timing. I'm not convinced that that was successful. Let's carry on watching closely. I think he's so fatigued that he may not be doing the job as well as he was when they would have started. And who knows, maybe this is going to be the end of the mating. It would be wonderful if we actually saw them go their own way and know that this marathon has come to a close. You can see how she's looking off very, very intently. And I think she's concerned that Karula could be watching her. There's a very strong likelihood that is the case. And a very big well done to Jamie for finding you guys the lioness as well as a male. Aren't we getting completely spoilt on the sunset safari?
Now this morning there was another the resident female.
On the topic of Karula, taking a close look at her.
That was very
Oh,
close.
here they go
This
again.
female, she comes from very
I'm going to get to your question shortly, Gilly. Let's just listen
This is
carefully.
this male, this is terrible. So she's actually following.
You see, that was much better. That, I think, was a successful... That looked a lot more productive.
With Fuzzy and my daughter in Ghana, south of Treehouse Dam. Thank you very much.
Back to your question, Gilly, in Milwaukee. We'd like to know if we think Karula would be keeping an eye on Kwatile just to ensure that she leaves this territory once she's done. And I think you're exactly right. I think Karula understands Kwatile's predicaments and has probably on several events had to leave her own territory in search of the dominant male to mate with. So you can almost say she is understanding of the scenario, but just keeping a close eye on Kwatile's movements in case she gets a little bit too comfortable here on Karula's territory. So I think you spot on there with your theory.
Give that man a bulge.
And Leo in Washington would like to know exactly what would happen if Karula did come onto the scene. And it's hard to say, I've never actually seen it happen firsthand, but I know that not very long ago Shadow, another female leopard, was seen mating with the Anderson male just a few days after actually mating with this same big male here, Tingana. And she followed the Anderson male into a female leopard known as Salayeshwe in Sibambili. She followed Anderson into that territory and bumped into Salayeshwe, and Salayeshwe and Shadow chased one another around, growling and snarling. I don't think they had any physical contact, but they certainly did have an argument or an altercation of sorts. And like a lot of altercations in nature between all of the different animals, you'll find that they try and communicate and discuss the problem to get to the bottom of it rather than coming to blows straight off the bat. So you'll often find a lot of roaring and hissing and snarling. Body language and posturing go a long way for these animals when they are sorting out their issues. But in the same breath, I have heard of females having almighty fights with one another. So we'd only be able to wait and see if Karula did come onto the scene. They could have in fact interacted sometime last night. So that's also something to remember. There's a lot that goes on that we don't see. Okay, well, while the leopards are at rest, I think it's a good opportunity to get you back to Jamie and the lions. And hopefully by the time we come back, Kwatile will be ready to seduce Tingana another time. See you later.
Welcome back, and from one loving feline pair to another, or sort of loving feline pair, we've managed to reposition a little bit. Unfortunately, we are none the wiser as to the identity of this particular Birmingham boy, due to the fact that most of his face is covered with leaves and grass, and he did not even lift his head once as I shuffled the car around to get a better view of him. I thought maybe it was the male with that slightly darker eye. Oh, is she going to... No, she's just going to roll over. Just to give you an idea, it is fairly chilly around here. She's awake and restless, and you can actually see how... I don't know, I don't know if she looks uncomfortable. She doesn't look fully at ease with him. She's curled up in her own little ball against the cold and the wind. I think we've all been captivated by this lioness's peacemaking efforts. Now, Lynn, you were wondering, since she is on her own with this particular Birmingham boy. Oh, so tired. Had a very long day. Now, Lynn, you were wondering if she might lead him back towards her pride, especially since we're talking about the fact that she does look... I might be putting too much human emotion on it, but she does look rather lonely, curled up there in her ball. And I think it's highly unlikely. Oh, are we going to see some action at all? I think she would stay well away from the pride. Now, typically male lions are very possessive over the lionesses that they're mating with. Oh, big stretch. He does look to be the one with a slightly blackened eye. I'm going to try and duck down. Another big yawn. And very often yawns are what precede a lion getting up. What is he hearing? He's looking intently off into the distance. Big yawn again. And I do think that they are both going to get up and get mobile. He is absolutely enormous. For a young lion, he's probably somewhere in the region of 4 years old. Look at those enormous feet. Sorry, Lynn, I haven't forgotten about your question. I will get back to answering it fully in a moment. I'm trying to duck away so we can keep him in view as well. Oh, I think he might just, yes, he's just going to lie down in front of us. So we do have, I think we have an ID on this boy. I think that it is Scrapper. He looks to have that slightly blackened left eye, which would make him Scrapper. And did you see there was a little bit of blood around the base of his nostril? Now there's two options there. One is that it was the female turning around and batting him after he did mate with her. The other is a possibility that he clashed with one of the other coalition members. And it's not uncommon for members of a coalition, although they are very, very close and very tightly bonded, it's not uncommon for them to clash over either males or females. This is not the male that I saw mating with this lioness last night. The lioness that I saw, or the male that I saw mating with her, was one of the younger males similar age to him, but not him. He was with the other four that were lying 50 meters to the south and to the west of where we were. And that's interesting. It gives us another clue into the dynamics of what has been playing out here. Really, really interesting stuff happening. He appears to have settled down there, and I think he's been living up to his name, Scrapper. She is still sitting off to my right. She hasn't got up to move with him, but I think she is thinking about it. She's doing the usual licking her feet and yawning. I'm just planning my route should they decide to suddenly start getting moving. I'm also wondering if his brothers are going to start to call, if he is going to call back at them, or if he's going to be reticent. Oh, that was a big yawn. If she does get up, we're going to have to move fairly quickly to get into a good position to watch them and to see what happens. And just while we're looking at this beautiful female who's been so brave in her attempts at connecting or making a connection with these Birmingham boys, just to finish up with Lynn's question, I don't think she would lead them back to her pride. Typically, males are very, very possessive over the females that they're mating with, and even with sort of the normal dominant stable situation, they might still be reticent about letting any other females from that pride near them. And I think that she would be well aware of that, and she would want to avoid provoking further aggression. Let's just watch this beautiful lioness for a moment. Craig is calling me on the radio. I think he's interested in joining us. Standing by, Craig. Yeah, that's affirmative. It almost looked like they were going to get mobile, but they're promptly lalapanzi again. Copy. Okay, I'm just letting Craig know what's happening. He's going to come and join us. She's obviously giving her feet a really good clean. And that is usually with lions. They do it after a meal, but it can often be a sign that they are going to get up and start to walk. And it is reaching that time of the evening. I mentioned yesterday that I thought she might be looking fairly hungry. And I'm wondering if this isn't a perfect evening for her to go out hunting. Although she will be distracted by the male, and typically mating lions don't hunt and eat unless an opportunity presents itself. Tonight is very cloudy. There's going to be absolutely no ambient light. And it's windy. And it's going to give a perfect huntress like this lioness the perfect opportunity to go hunting. Craig, probably your best visual is going to be to the western side of me. My daughter's just lying up a little bit further in. Just letting Craig know which way he's going to have the best visual. Really very interesting dynamic. She's giving those feet a very good clean. And that's important. Those dew claws in there, the claws, are tucked into a keratin sheath to keep them nice and sharp. But if they didn't keep up their hygiene routine around their feet and they let dirt and sand build up around them, then they'd have a lot more difficulty actually getting those claws out, sliding the claws out of their sheath when they need to use them for hunting. So it's quite an important aspect of their routine. He's up and on his way. There he goes. We're going to try and stay with him, I think. I think she's going to go as well. There we go, she's up. I'm just going to let her go a little bit ahead of me. I don't want to come between them or stress her out. So let's let her go ahead. That big girl. And off they go, stalking into the night. Let's see if we can stay with them. I'm going to put my spotlight down for now. Ready, Andrew?
Yes.
Good man. stay with these lions and figure out where they're going to go. And while I do, I've got a brilliant update from Jean in Los Angeles. And thank you for that, Jean. Jean tells me that she was watching yesterday afternoon, and it looked as though the Birmingham boy who was mating with the female had 2 dark spots under his left cheek. Stopped again, she's settled down again. The Birmingham boy is actually moving fairly fast. She stopped to urinate. Let's just see where this male has gone to. I saw him stop and look back at us just a bit further ahead. He's almost, there he is. I think he stopped to wait for her. Over there, she is here off to my right, so I'm going to move out of their way to allow them a moment to reconnect. I don't want to in any way jeopardize the peacekeeping talks. Oh, it's getting thick in here. Let's loop around. Now I can see both lions moving, but we're going to try and stay with them. In the meantime, the leopards are up and about and mobile, so we're going to head across to Scott and catch up with you later.
Welcome back, everyone, and the lions are on the move, the leopards are on the move, it's all happening here. And they've just walked onto VM and I actually were involved in constructing together, and we've named it Ingwe Alley.
Not off you, you're right.
And Greg was just kindly offering for us to go in front, but we've had such good visuals of them that we will let them go ahead, as they haven't been as spoilt as we have this afternoon and this morning and yesterday afternoon. Poor old Tingana, he is so tired, she's looking back longingly at him, wondering what he's waiting for. And off they go, and I think this will be our last images of them. We've had so many, and it'll be quite fitting to see them disappear off into the shadows. Well, what a wonderful, wonderful day it's been here in Nkuhuma and Arethusa Game Reserves, and what's made it special is that all you guys have been able to join in from places around the world, different time zones, different countries, different cultures, but we're all in the safari together, and that's what I love about it, especially when we are getting spoilt with spectacles like we've got to experience today. And it wasn't only the leopards, but also some really cute elephant sightings with Jamie, and now the lions. I've just heard one last grunting growl of the mating leopards. What a day it's been. Thanks so much for all your contributions, help, questions, comments. Brian in Philadelphia, I'm glad to know you're still watching. And a very big thank you to Nikki and Jess in the final control room, and also to VM, who's on camera. And let's not forget, it's also Andrew's birthday today, so it's all happening here on the Safari Live crew, and it's a pleasure to have you involved with it all. See you on the Sunrise Safari. Back to Jamie with the lions.
Welcome back, and we've done some rather seriously thick off-road driving to try and stay with this Birmingham boy. The female is still making her way. In fact, I think the female might be lying down now. It's interesting to see the dynamics at play. He's steadily moving that way, but he keeps looking back to see where she is. I can just see her silhouetted in the other vehicle's lights. Oh, she's coming to us. She is going to come towards us. Here she comes now. Look at that. Creature stalking through the night. How beautiful is that? Completely silent. And completely deadly. There she is, coming through this way. She's going to walk behind the vehicle. Instinct is still telling her to follow behind. Here she comes. Well done, Andrew. And off she goes. Okay, let's stay with him. Amazing stuff happening here. Not like a typical mating pair that we would be used to seeing. They are quite separate from each other. He's lying down now, which is perfect. Let's see how they interact here. There we go. Sorry, Andrew. How are you doing? You okay? I just wanted to get this action. Here we go. That's what we've been looking for. And he's still not getting it right. She's trying to get him. She's trying to get him to get it right. And he's just not managing. Although he's got the actions down, his aim is just that little bit off. But it's still happening, it's still going on. And that was absolutely incredible. Well done, Andrew. Sorry to...
Perfect, don't worry.
Now I'm going to try and stay with them. It is going to be very, very tricky. It's an incredibly thick block. Looping round from our position now might be a bit tricky, but we've seen the most important action, and that is the attempt, however failed it may have been, to have mated. Going to approach him again, and he's still going to move on. I'm just trying to roughly calculate how far we are from our southern boundary. We must be fairly close. I'm going to reposition now before we lose them. Luckily, I think we've got some open space up ahead of us. Just watch this tree on your left, Andrew. Okay. Sneak around here. Try and stay with them. See them up ahead of us. try and stay with them right up until they cross our southern boundary, which is what I think they're going to do. Oh, this brings back memories of aardvark holes. And we are going to be extending the show this evening up until I either lose them or they cross the boundary. It is very tricky terrain. Andrew's doing a superb job at the back there. And his birthday and everything. Here we go, a little bit of a close-up on that eye of his.
So the other four have crossed all the way south of the line, which is our southern line. So they've moved quite
I'm hoping he might turn around and face us again. It definitely looks like Scrapper to me, and John agrees. So John on Twitter, I think we're right, it is Scrapper. I'm not sure where the lioness went. He's going to lie down again, so I'm sure she's going to come and approach him in a moment. Now, I actually can't reposition at the moment without putting him under pressure. There's no way around except straight into this open space that he is sitting right in the middle of. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to put him under unnecessary pressure. But we have got a good view of him. Not sure where the female went. Oh, here she comes. She's going to come in from the right. There she is. Let's see what happens here again. She's going to approach him. Listen to that amazing sound. He still doesn't know what to do. She's trying to make it so clear to him about what's expected from him, and he's just not really getting the message. I'm going to duck down just as they start to move in that direction, just so that the guests in the other vehicle also have an opportunity to see what's happening. She's lying down. He's moving off very slowly, just ahead of her. She's definitely got her work cut out for her, this poor lioness. Trying to teach him what's expected of him. Still not getting the message. Very, very interesting. Now I think that he could well be focused on where the rest of his coalition have gone. She's quite happy with the situation. She's getting, or at least almost getting, the attention she was after. But I could even imagine that he was distracted by the presence of the female, and the rest of the Birmingham boys moved off without him really being aware of it. Now, typically this would be the perfect time for lions to start to call. That being said, I think he might be a little bit reticent to draw attention to his position. Not when he's on his own and there's so many other big lions out there. There she goes. slightly away from his position. I am going to reposition and give Craig a chance. He's going to come through on the other side of me. She's gone right, male's gone left. I'm just going to wait a moment. I can't really go forward, so just wait. Cheers, Craig. Sorry, I'll be out of your way in a moment.
No problem.
Thank you.
Just off
From the boundary. Yeah.
the quarry.
Oh, is that who we are?
Yeah,
Awesome, thanks.
no problem.
So Craig's just told me we're coming up to the quarry on Gowrie Main. At least now I know where we are. I can see the lights of passing cars up ahead. Let's try and stay with these guys. Ready, Andrew? So we have to bump us over this branch. And while I do that, I'm going to answer Kim's Twitter question. Kim, you're wondering if I know how old Scrapper is. Here we go. Some of it with us, but we are over and out. And Scrapper is somewhere in the region of 4 years old. So he's very, very young. And typically a male lion will only come into the pride or their prime around the age of 6 to 7 when they can really start competing. Good day, Andrew? Got it? Not the easiest block to navigate through. Keep your eyes peeled, everybody. Somewhere in the darkness. So is the road, actually. Now Cecilia, oh sorry, I just need to hop onto the Game Drive channel, but Cecilia, you're absolutely right. She is an older female with a younger male. Definitely makes her a cougar, not a lion. No negative, Craig, I'm just checking further ahead. Sorry guys, Craig was just asking me if I could still see them. Just hit a road, somewhat unexpectedly because it's not the road I was expecting to get to. It's amazing how disorienting it can be out here in the bush. Where have our lions gone? Oh, driving around and looping in the block. Not too sure where they went.
I think it might have maybe gone a bit more to the east.
Okay, I'm going to head in that direction. I'll see if I can
I'm
catch.
going to make my way up to Gowrie Main and slowly back to... Yeah, there's
Okay.
a couple of guys on the Gowrie Main waiting to take over.
Awesome, okay. Cheers, thanks Craig.
No problem. Thank you.
Ah, have I got something there? Or is it something else? Now, Craig tells me that he's going to loop down to Gowrie Main. And apparently there's a couple of people there on standby to take over. I'm going to pull off and let him pass, and then we're going to check along here. No sign of them. This is exactly the direction that they were moving in, and there's lots and lots of vehicles standing by up ahead. I'm going to head off back onto the road. Looking, there's a chance that we passed them and that they decided to sit down again. But what I'm going to do is go and sit right over there where we popped out, which was in the general direction they were moving, and I'm going to listen and see if we can get any audio of them. Lots of vehicles moving up and down to try and catch up where these lions went to. Move just a little bit further ahead and then stop here. Okay, so many vehicles out and about. Let's try and use our ears. I'm listening for those purring, growling sounds that she was making when she was trying to tempt him into mating. Let's just sit and see what we can hear. Now we are right at our southern boundary. I can see lots of the vehicles moving up and down. So even if we don't manage to catch up with them here, they would still have moved across very, very soon. I haven't given up hope just yet. It must be tucked away in here somewhere. Very cunning lions. They've almost pulled a Karula-like trick, ducking away like that. Copy, thank you. Okay, let's see if we can get there in time, but it sounds as though they're about to cross, and I think we may have seen our last glimpse of the lions for the evening. Unfortunately, they're right on Gowrie Main. They're coming through and across to the south of us. And that could well be because the Birmingham boy is on his way to try and reunite with the rest of his coalition. Copy that. Thanks, Craig. Are they crossing south? Copy that. Thank you. Don't worry. No problem. Sorry, guys. Just to let you know, the lions have just gone across our southern boundary. And not only that, but there are now 4 vehicles accidentally in that sighting. There were a couple standing by. So we're not going to go and push our way in. They have moved straight across and south into what I think is Little Gowrie, but I'm not entirely sure of exactly where we are. But it has been a phenomenally exciting few days, and so many changes happening in this area. From Tingana mating with Kwatile, with Karula in the area, probably with a very out of joint nose, to these Birmingham boys and this one lone brave Nkuhuma lioness. And I think it's safe to say, Andrew, you've had a good birthday, huh?
Oh, it's been awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you for everything, Andrew, and for all your fantastic camera work. And thank you as well to Nikki and Jess and FC and Eugene, and a big thank you to all of you, the viewers. We've had a wonderful afternoon, and I'm so happy we could share it with all of you. And thank you to Joan and Raisa and many others who sent me through information about the Wahlberg's mating practices. I didn't forget, we've just been so busy. Well, we will catch up with you for the sunrise drive tomorrow morning. Have a wonderful day or wonderful evening wherever you are in the world.